So yes, so in last class we were discussing about object-oriented programming, and we talked about like how to create classes or how to do the prototypal inheritance by using function thing, which was ES5 or the traditional or legacy JavaScript type of thing. And then we talked about towards the end that now these same things, it has something which is called as introduce some syntax sugar to allow us to create object in more intuitive, familiar way. So we are familiar with these class keyword, we are familiar with extends keyword, we are familiar with super keyword or final keyword or keyword like that. So you see that ES6, not before ES6. So after ES6, it has introduced this syntax sugar, and we can create objects in the familiar way of class keyword. So this is something that we have already done, like we are familiar with class keywords and something. So it's important to note that, however, we are still in using prototypal inheritance, and the process of creating objects is still the same. And if we take example, so if you see here, just a quick review because we have just already talked about it a bit. So we can define a class now by using a class architect word, like class reserve word, class word. And please bear in mind, I'm just repeating that again, ES6 is giving or has given this facility to us that we can do that. Number one. Number two, we can just define that class architect, and then we are defining what? A constructor. And this constructor, what we did in our previous classes was that we were creating that constructor by using this function keyword, same ways as we are using that traditional JavaScript function. So constructor, which is accepting two parameters, and those two parameters are set with the two values of this object, my current object, the contextually this object, and then one of the parameter it's setting, like whenever constructor will be called, it will set occupation automatically to the architect because this is the object of architect. And these are the setters and getters. The first setter, which will set name, the set age, get name, get age, and this has been already set by us, so no need to. You can just get that by accessing it, or there is no setter getter for that particular occupation. Right, and the same way you can create the objects as well. So object, we know that we were creating something like this, var architect1 equals to new architect. Now, so please bear in mind again this new keyword and this class, or technically speaking, this is not the class. Technically speaking, it's basically constructor has been called here. So in good old days, like when we first studied JavaScript, or like when we first studied object-oriented programming, maybe in Java, so we heard that as well. Someone told us that it's basically we are creating a class, and the class names comes here. So of course that is correct, because constructor has the same name as the class, so the class name comes here. But of course that is not the class being used here, that the name of the class. It's specifically we are calling the constructor over here, and this constructor accepting these two values and then creating our object for architect. And again, it will accept this in name and in age, and then it will just set up name and age according to that particular syntax, and then we can just get that. Same way as architect2, so object name, the new and the class name again to camouflage it, but of course constructor name and then constructor being called. So then we can just use that architect dot name dot architect dot whatever you want, you can access, or you can just get name and set name through the getters or setters method. Is that right now, Saroj? So again, so as we said that we have that now you say we specify the structure from function, take initialization parameters, as well as specify all of the methods within the class block. So now we can leverage the extends and super keywords to create objects when inherit from the other objects easily. A detailed example. You remember we discussed that example as well a bit. This is ES6 classes and inheritance, and you can always have a look at it if you want to have like greater detail of that. So it has just compared, like this article is just comparing both of the the legacy or the ES5 syntax, and as well as it is just mentioning the ES6 syntax as well. Right. So today we have to we'll be just starting from error and exception handling. If I remember, yes, I stopped here. Anyhow, so error and exception handling is also, it has that same method of error or exception handling which we used to do in our other languages. Exception handling usually comes in object-oriented languages when we have that exception, the runtime error and expected runtime error, and we just try to handle that runtime error in a bit. So it is one of the very important aspects is to elegantly handling errors, gracefully exiting out of the program. There are two ways of exiting out of a program: a crash exit and a graceful exit. So a graceful exit is always something that a programmer looks for when they are programming any type of applications, be it web or desktop applications. So they look for elegant exit. So it is important never to let your program suddenly crash or enter an unknown state due to an unanticipated error. Up until now, we have seen numerous mechanisms in JavaScript to handle certain types of logical errors. For example, the global is nan, not a number. This is a function, not a number. Function is a way elegantly respond to a situation where a number was expected but not returned. So again, if a number was coming from somewhere but that number is not received, you can see the example over here. X is equal to 20, y is equal to parse int of x. So parse int, and this is 20 TWENTY, so it won't be parsed into int, and it only parses into int when that is a number given. I hope that all of you know that about that. So let y is equal to parse int. The y is expected to receive an integer. So if it is not receiving an integer, if isNaN is not a number, so y is not a number, x cannot be converted. And if it is a number, of course, success the num values. So graceful exit by using isNaN function, is nan function, and nan is basically is not a number. So nan is not a number, and I hope you know this nan. Have you people used this nan before? Have you people seen that nan? Okay, yes. So no need to just go into write down the detail to have. So nan. Similarly, we can use global is finite function to handle the situation where division by 0 has occurred. So is finite or is not finite, another graceful method of exit, that you check if the z is coming as a finite value or not infinite value. If it is a finite value, show something. If it is not, of course, don't show anything at all. Now, yes, so if you see here, however, while these functions are extremely useful and handling logical errors, they are not sophisticated enough to handle a situation that would completely break your code and cause the program to fail. For example, consider the following example and use our new const keyword. So we have just used a const keyword here, and const keyword represents a variable, a value that becomes constant, not a variable, becomes a constant value 3.14159. So that will be a const value. So const console.log trying to change pi. We are changing that pi is equal to 99. We are giving just a message that it should be 99 now. Here we are trying to change the value of a const pi. If you try to run this short program in Node.js, the program will crash before we get the chance to see or whatever. So even if that, even this is now 3.14, there is no elegant recovery that we can recovery, and we do not get to exit the program gracefully. As I'm saying again, the graceful exit of the program requires something. So for that, what we do is that we try to use that same try catch block, the exception handling that we did in Java or maybe in some other languages. So we can throw basically here Node.js will be throwing an error, and we should have a catcher over there that can catch that error. So again, just a small tweaking to the previous code. Just put that pi is equal to 99. Of course, that is a code that is prone to be an error, that can become an error later on. So what you do is that you have basically pi is equal to 99 catch. So you are trying and catching. So again, try pi 99. If something wrong happens, so gracefully look at, an error occurred. So that means you are gracefully giving a message, and then at the end you are saying allows it to be done. Pi remains the pi, whatever is the value, because it cannot change. And if it was supposed to be changed, or if it has changed, so of course you will get so the pi, of course we know that it won't be changing, but again, so catch will be always executed. The pi will not change its value. So if we execute our code, Node.js will find our program does not crash, and our string alas it can be done pi is found get correctly logged on the terminal. Additionally, we can execute a specific block when we get an error is encountered, and in case we output this one. This is not very useful to help us debug the error, but the better to having the problem crash, and least we know that an error occurred indeed occurred. So again, so that is one way of try catch that we have already familiar. And there is another one. We can make some of the properties methods of the error object that was thrown an exception caught in a catch block. So error object has different properties, and we can even display that error. Here you see that we are catching that error, so we get a message. So we can display that message, ex.message. So what is the message inside that? So we can check that there are different types of error objects that we can utilize over here. So it is one type of error that is thrown by our Node.js. And now we can have that type of that. There is another thing we discussed, finally block. So finally block always execute code in this block. So the finally block is always executed, be it comes with pi is equal to 99, or maybe it comes with pi is equal to 3.149. So that finally block always execute is always executed. So that way we just try to find out it outputs first over error assignment to constant variable. It will give that message that you are defining something, a constant. They are calling constant variable. So I think better word is the constant value, and then you are changing that constant value, trying to change that constant value by using that one. So finally, and now you can throw errors by yourself, and you know that you have this ability of using this throw errors. Now that we know how to correctly handle errors, we should always wrap our entire program in the try so that every exceptions are caught. Rocky, this is a good ploy. This is a good question from Rocky. Rocky says, why not place our all program inside that try block, and maybe all errors are caught? Would anyone like to chime in and just add something to it or reply to this answer, like Rocky's question? Rocky's asked a error. It's not a good idea. Saroj, why? If you can give a quick sense of it, why it's not a good idea? Or maybe anyone else other than Saroj? Why it's not a good idea to place all the program, or maybe place so and so things, whatever? Yes, anyone other than Saroj, or maybe Saroj? You put only those places where we have error prone zone. Yes, usually that happens, that we usually place that code inside that one. Okay, and we cannot catch errors of that. Anyone else would like to just put in like any specific thing about that? Maybe. Or Rocky, what do you feel by yourself? As Saroj is saying, this is the right thing. That exceptions are usually used at those locations where you feel that might becomes an error, and that might what are exceptions? Can you give me the definition of exception? Anyone? Maybe Daniel or anyone? Exception. What is exception? Okay, we need exceptions too while working. Okay. Server side. I'm asking Naseem the definition of exception. What is exception? Like I need the definition of only this word exception. Yes, you are right, server side. Something else than usual. That might be correct. Any other definition? You're right. That's something else than usual. It might be. Yeah. Exception is an error during the runtime. So I know that I have got some code that of course that can never become a harmful code in some ways or others. I violate our system rules. You are right. So I know that there is a piece of code that can never harm, or that can never produce an error. For example, let me just give you a quick example, and that whenever we just see that, whenever we just study that, we have got that. Okay, so one of the very popular error, there are 2 or 3 very popular errors. One is array index out of bound. That whenever array index goes out of bound, you get a runtime exception. Then there is a very popular one you would have used somewhere. We would have some divide by 0 error. So again, I know that this code that I'm writing has a divide by value that is coming from user. So if user is putting up that value, so there is every chance that sometime user might put in a 0, or maybe this value is coming from calculation. So that calculation can sometimes become a problem. So that sometimes can become a problem, and that calculated value might become a 0 somewhere. So that I feel that this part of code is something that is prone, and that might or might not for life. The y becomes 0. User never gives the 0. But if user gives the 0, then this will become a crash problem. That will become a ungraceful exit of my program. So what I want to do is that I want to just place it's inside the try catch block. And again, and I know that there is, for example, if I say that this is y upon 5, for example, this code, and this is been executing, and this will be calculation. So I'm 100% sure, of course, that usually that during this code I won't have any it might never run into a problem, be it any value of y, because we are always dividing by 5. So I mean to say, when you are accessing a file, when you are accessing an input area, and when you are accessing something that you think that might cause a problem for us, for that area only we only go for that particular thing. So again, see here, if we see that example again, so const pi 0 3.15 console dot line. So again, these two lines, they are never prone to a problem. Const pi is const pi always. There won't be a runtime error. And if you are doing some compile time error, if you are not doing an exception type of error, that means that would be caught by your compiler or your, now even our editor catches the problem, and it even let us know that the thing that you are using is not the correct one. It will just give you that 400. Naseem, 400 means what? I'm not getting your 400. Can you just elaborate on that? So anyhow, so Rocky, basically what we are saying is that, so try to place that code that is prone to the problem. But if it is not prone to a problem, we usually do not try to place that code inside that. See here, it's the same divide by error. This is very popular one, and I think each one of you would have experienced out of bound error sometimes in your life in a website. Can anyone tell me that you have experienced the out of bound error? Because you run a website and you see a red color text exception and something, and somewhere if you go, you find that there is an out of bound error. The error has gone out of array has gone out of bound, array index out of bound. Have you seen, anyone has seen that? On a website, you usually see that a website is coming with red text, and if you read that text, you will come to know that it shows that there is an exception occurred. Maybe an input output exception has occurred, maybe an error exception has occurred, or something like that. But anyhow, so function divide xy. So function is dividing x and y. So you see here, if y equals 0, so if y becomes 0, so that is the problem when the problem might occur. So what we are doing, that if x becomes 0, so just don't go in a hibernate or in a crash mode. Rather do what? Rather just throw a new error. So you are throwing an error from this part, and you say that if that happens, you just throw an error. And we have put that try inside that. Why? Because we know now you know why I'm putting this c equal divide ab inside, because I'm throwing an error from this function, and when I'm calling this function, I need to put that inside that try. Why? Because now I can assume that divide sometime may throw an error that is divide by 0 error. So I need to have some block to catch that. So I will put that one inside the try catch block, and what I'll do is that execute this ex, like again catch that. If there is a problem, I will catch that. Or maybe if I'm saying that, for example, c is equal to c is not a number or whatever, so you just display that, and you can just display a not a value. C becomes a not a number, and that graceful exit exists, that c shows not a number if the problem occurs, if the x becomes 0. And if you see that x basically what it is doing, we are calling two values, 3 and 0. B is 0, so it will do what? It will do a graceful exit by showing that 3 and 0, and that not a number. So this equal to is not a number, and I cannot do anything about that. I hope that makes sense. So you need to sometimes you need to throw an error, but again, if you are throwing an error, you need to catch that error by yourself as well. Catch that error. Okay, so these are I've not taken an example of that because we have already we are already somewhat familiar with these concepts. Now there is one concept that we are starting, and then I will just talk about this promises in a bit of detail. So how many of you know what are promises? Is there anyone who says that I have got a bit of concept of promises? What are promises? Before coming here, anyone? If someone says that yes, I have the concept of promises and I know what are promises, how to deal with them, something like that. Yep. I don't have my chat in front of me. Now it's front. Okay. Not receiving any message. What does that mean? After Naseem's 400. Naseem, is that 400 means that error has occurred? And no else would be replying anything else? Let me put a dashed line from my other user. Yep. So anyone, promises. Does anyone know? If you don't know, there is a very valid answer, IDK, which says don't know. Okay, Naseem, that's right. Anyone else who says that we know what are errors? What are promises? I'm sorry, not errors. Okay, that's a very valid answer, Naseem. Of course, as I said, that IDK is a very valid answer. I'm waiting for the others, maybe. Multi-threading. Daniel, let's, yes, maybe an equivalent implementation, you might call it multi-threading or type. Anyone else? Maybe that you can associate with it with the multi-threading or something. Question. Saroj, question is, let me just write down that question here. Promises are what? This is the question, Saroj. I hope you were here. Like, I asked this question, and this question was that what are promises? It expects data. That's good. You say that it expects data. Anyone else? Daniel says that it's a multi-threading type of something. Rocky says no idea. Rocky, that's a very good answer. No idea, right? Naseem says I don't know. IDK. Daniel says not sure. So anyhow, let's discuss promises. In our real world, when we say promise something, so promise is in real world also. What is the promise? That I will either. Okay, so you had observable and promises in Angular. So that's right. You would have heard that in Angular, maybe promises. So it's something like as a real life. You know, when we make a promise to someone, either we fulfill it or either we don't. Like this, these are the two options that we have. Rather, sometimes we might be following it up, or maybe sometimes we'll be saying that we are not following that promise, right? So promise is something that in, like, you know, in the same way as we have real life promises, promise is something that either is you know, successfully followed, successfully done, or maybe not followed. Let's take an example. For example, what, or maybe we can use let. Let is, you know, far more better than let promise, or maybe my promise equal to new promise function. Okay, here I'll stop for a bit because I remember we have discussed this problem before, this thing before, but I would like to know from all of you that how many of you know what are callback functions? Can anyone tell me what are callback functions? Because this is something important and related to this concept, directly or indirectly. What are callback functions? Anyone? If anyone can come up with a definition of callback functions? Argument function. Daniel, this is good. A bit more explanation I need. You say that argument function. What does that mean? Yes, Rocky, this is very correct. Why do we do that? Why do we do that? Yes, why do we do that? Like, why do we use, or why do we pass a function as an argument function to another function? Is there any reason behind that? Okay, anyone? Okay, now listen about that. Callback functions are, you know, it's a type of a, like, as you people said, this is correct. We pass that function as an argument, as a parameter to other function. And usually what do we want is that we want that function to occur once when, you know, I've passed two parameters, and alongside those parameters, what I'm passing, I'm passing another function. So I want to implement that function or execute that function. Yes, certain operation. You're right. This is correct. That callback functions are, you know, executed after after some happenings. Like I want a function to execute after a particular thing. For example, there are two functions that I want to execute, because, you know, this is, again, as I said, it's all related. There are two functions, and I'm calling first function and I'm calling the second function, and both of these functions have been defined and they have been called. Now what happens is that both of these functions will be turn by turn executing, right? So now what I want is that if I want to run a function after first function is done, after first function completes its functionality, then I will be using it as a callback function. Let me just, because, you know, promises will depend upon that. So let me make it a comment right now, and let's try to write something related to promises, something related to our callback function. I have a function that says my add whatever, and it takes a number to the function, and it does what? It just console logs a, right? Okay. Yes, rather we can just it just console logs a. This is my add function, and then I might have another function, I calculate, and it accepts two numbers, num1, num2. And here what I do is let sum equal to num1 plus num2. Simple addition. I'm just about to do that, right? And here what I'm doing is that I'm calling my add on sum. And this is, and I'm just calling with function my, what I've named this, my calculate with values. Okay, so I've just taken a simple example, and this will do what? This is a function that has been defined, which is just doing nothing, but just defining or just result whatever has been received. It just shows us that typical thing, right? And now what happens is that I want this function, this second function, my calculate, to execute, and the second function has is being passed these two numbers, and this is num, not num. Okay, thank you, Rocky. So this is num2. So we have these two numbers, and I wanted to just run. Now you see here, when I just run this program, save it, and let's run it without a server right now. I'm just running it. C.js. You see here that I can see a result of 5. Now, what is the problem here? Problem means what is happening? Even if this result or whatever I have passed, even if that result has not been executed, that result is having some problem, is having anything at all, I cannot prevent this my calculate function to display the result. What does that mean? That this my add function will always display the result. Why? Because it's displaying the result, and it will be called on its on turn. So even if there is something wrong has happened, again, if that is an error that is not allowing it to run, that is not a problem. But we cannot, whenever we'll call this function, this will definitely have this my function, my add function, and that will be calling exactly after what? When we are done with our values. So again, whether these values are the legitimate ones or not, it will just keep on executing that. Now if I just make a different thing, and what I do is that I pass this function, for example, as a parameter, right? So my add, and remember one thing, whenever we are just calling a callback function, we just call that function without any, like, without parentheses. Yes, my add is this function that I am passing it. Okay, so no, not my add. Okay, I'm just calling it, or maybe my calling, anything function, right? So I'm just calling it my with a function name, my call, and let's call that. Right? So what is that? This function now is basically passed. Now what we are doing, that we are basically passing this function with a name, like with a parameter, my calling, and then this function has been asked to add or sum our display. And now whenever we will be just passing that one, and here we'll be passing at my add, because we are not using the same name, right? So what it will do is that now this function has been passed as a callback function, and what we want to do is that whenever these two values are received, everything is being done, then you just go and call that function. And this is the way that we were using typically before that. Let's run that. Does that give us the right result or the same result? It's giving the same result. Now what we are doing is that now we are passing a function, and we are saying that after the execution of everything, then you just go and call that function, and that function is available in your, and we have got this habit, and we have just already done that as well many a times, that we have got this habit of defining the function over here. You can even define the function over here, and that function will become what? A parameter for the other function. So that will execute after that. After the happening, after all these statements have been executed, now we can just do that a callback function, and that callback function will be running that particular type of thing. Now, this is what I wanted to say you, that when we just talk about the promises, we are typically saying what we are passing, or let me just make it uncommented, or maybe comment that one and uncomment that one. Right. So now when we are defining my promise, what we do is that we will be passing a function, and this function will be accepting two parameters. There is these two. One is called resolve, and one is called reject. So what are resolve, reject? Resolve, reject are the parameters that promise accepts or promise use for delivering something, if something is delivered or not. As I said, the promise typically means that whether something will be delivered, whether something will happen, or whether something will not happen, right? So these are the two values that we'll be using. So if I define that body of that function and just make it a comment, so we're defining the body of the function, right? So now here we can run any type of code, and after that code, when this code is executed, I will be calling resolve, or I will be calling reject. What are these two functions? These are the happenings of a promise, whether resolving a promise, like again the promise has been fulfilled, or either rejecting a promise, or a promise has not been accepted. So this will be executed when promise is fulfilled, right? Like again, it is successfully done, and when error has occurred. So when error will occur, so basically what will happen, that we will have this one executing, and if that error does not happen, then we will have running. Okay, so now to run this promise, you need to, whenever you need to run this promise, you need what? That you will be needing then. So now then will be accessing those values, whatever has been passed from that. Like again, whenever that will be resolved, and we will have those values over here. So now if function with any value, right, and we can define a body over here, and this is for then, and what we are saying that when some value is coming from there, and we are calling from the successful part. Or maybe there can be a function for rejection, which is maybe getting an error, right? Function. Okay, right. So what is happening over here? So you just need to have a comma over here. So what is happening over here? The promise, it accepts two objects, and depending upon the happening, like whatever was defined over there, either a promise is accepted or either a promise is rejected, right? So in our notes, there is one example of it, and before that example, they have just they've just shown something interesting. Where is that? Our note. Okay, so we have got our notes over here. Let me take that out. Okay, so you see here, there is one example of that. First of all, they have just defined three functions which are using a timeout, and after some point of time, they are just executing. You see here, function output A, this will output function A, which is just defining a variable, random variable, and set timeout function console log A random time. So you see here that set timeout has been passed a function that will execute at a random time. So whatever random time will be executed. So same way, these are the three functions that have been defined over here. So first function, function A, function B, function C, and they will be executed. Now let's run this one, and we'll just see how they are behaving and how promises are going to help us out. So let's close that one. Let's make that one comment for the time being, and come here. So now see here, we have got these three functions. The first function is output A, which outputs A after a random time, and that random time is specifically whenever after this random time is calculated over here, like between 3 seconds, 0 to 3 seconds. Same with B and same with C. Now, if you run this program, you will see a different output. You might see a different output. How many of you see the same output as like me, CAB? Or you have some different output? Anyone? Would anyone like to tell me that what is the output that they are getting? Yes, Saroj, what is the output that you got? With me, it's CAB. It might be ABC with you. It might be with BAC with someone. So do you see the same output? Everyone? Okay, still waiting for the response. No one has responded as yet. Oh, looks like. Okay, so Saroj says BAC. Okay, so Saroj is different. Anyone else? Rocky, what do you see as output? Okay, you see CAB. So you are also seeing like CAB. So you see what is happening. All these functions are running after a random time within the 3 seconds. So might be for us, for me and for Rocky, this C executed after maybe 1 second, and then A executed after 2 seconds, and then B executed after 3 seconds maybe. So every function is running and no one is blocking the other, number one. And everyone which has this output, they will just display that output, even though we have called them ABC. So what's happening is they are running independent of each other, and they can run in any sequence at all. But what if I always needed this A's output to run, like A's output to generate first, and then B should run, and then C should run? Are you getting this? If I was in a condition where I had this requirement that the A's output will become the input or the feedback for this output B, and the output B will produce a result, will produce a data, and that data will become the the input or the input parameter for my output C. So Saroj, you see, this is very good. You are right. But what if this is the, why we have used this set timeout, do what? This set timeout basically imitates the original behavior, where in real world, when your first program is waiting for a file to open, and when that file will open, if that file is found, if that file is available, then your next function will go on. So Saroj, you are right. To save our life right now, just remove the timeout and run sequentially. But I'm talking about in those situations where that is necessary to run one function before the other one. So you're getting the point? Maybe you said this remove timeout out of seriousness, or out of you just trying to make something. So Saroj, so that it is imitating the situation in our real world when one of the function is basically waiting for the remove complexity. Saroj, you're right. But what if I ask you, Saroj, that write 3 functions? One of the function will, for example, create a file, and that would create a file. The other function is that will definitely write on a file, do nothing else. And there is another function that will delete the file. And I want you to just do that in sequential order. How will you do that, Saroj? You will make 3 functions, but again, creating a file might be, you say that it will take just few seconds and I can just create that file without any problem. But you know what, in the real world, when I say that just go and open that file and try to find them file, or maybe run a specific query, that takes a good amount of time. So in that situation, you need to have something. Yes. So if it takes time, so again, if you are calling these function together, so first function, even if it has not completed the output, you will be reading that. So maybe, for example, the first function is trying to create a file, and by the same time you just start running your second function, which is not, the file is not ready, which you are trying to read that function, read that file. So again, in that situation, what you need to do is that you will be basically looking for some solution. So you see that it says that you might get a result of ACB, you might get a result for BCA, CBAB, depending upon that. Now, resolve and reject, those are two things that we have talked about. So resolve and reject does it for us. And how does that do? Fortunately, JavaScript has the notion of the promise, the same promise that we are talking about. and that can help us solve this type of situation. Put simply a promise object, and now see there, now see here that it will have two functions. I'm quickly going through. It will have one resolve function, it will have one reject function. So resolve function will run if the code is successfully executed, and reject function will run if the successful implementation has not been done. Now see here, this is a simple program. Now what they did was, rather than defining this set timeout, if you see here, this was the set timeout was defined. Rather than defining that set timeout directly, they have done that as a promise. So return new promise, defining a promise that will have a function resolve reject. As I told you, that's resolve reject function. And this curly braces, this will start its functionality, set timeout function. Now, this is a set timeout function that is starting from this point, and it's going all the way till this point, So now there is a function that will log A. And once it successfully logs A, it will call resolve. And you know, this function, that set timeout function, will run at a random time. So let's suppose it is taking 3 seconds, maybe, because we have done that 3-second type of thing. If it is taking 3 seconds, even if it is taking 3 seconds, unless this console.log A will execute, you know, this random at this random time, we will not reach to this resolve code. Saroj, are you getting this? We will only reach to this one when successfully this A has been executed. Now, what happens? Output A, this one, output A function, dot then. This dot then is used to catch the successful execution of the promise, right? So this is the way to call it. Output A dot then function and console A output A resolve. So what is doing that? The then is accepting that then is just another calling another function, and that function is just consoling output A resolve. Now let's quickly run that. It won't give a rocket science result. Okay, we have not talked about reject as yet. Rocky, you are right. We have not talked about reject as yet. So this is only for success. We'll talk about the reject shortly. Yes, this is not rejecting. Of course, this will be just printing out. Okay, you are right. Then we should first discuss that about rejecting as well. So now this will do what? This will just see that it has been successfully done, and it will just show as the result. So this is what this is happening. Now, what is there? This new promise returns a promise with a resolve and reject function, and this resolve and reject are that executed by using this then function. Now, one of the things that they're done, but I will come to this catch, reject and catch over here. See here. So what it is doing, new promise function resolve reject, set timeout function console log dash A reject. So if I call this reject from a function, from any situation, this can be a situation, you say, if something has been printed, for example, if something has happened, if something has been, the file is being accessed or file was not exist, you will call reject function over here. And here, what they are doing, they are also passing the data to it. And you know, let me just quickly go back over here. You can add data to your resolve or reject function. What we do is that if you pass it resolve, output A resolve, if you call that function, you're passing this data, and your function should receive that data as well. So it will receive that output A resolve, and it will just log that out. So simply it is doing that. So now if you are catching that one, what you will do, that you will basically do what? That reject output A is rejected. And see here, we have output A then dot then function data console data. So this then will be executed when? Anyone? Will this be executing in this situation? Because in this situation we are using no. It will reject. It will be called when resolve is called. But if you see here, we have got this catch. This catch will be called if the error has occurred or reject has been called. So reject comes up with the error. So here is the error, and the message has been provided to it, and this catch will be calling up this function, and this reject will happen. Right? So this function, this one over here, just calling the reject over here, and depending upon some of the conditions. So it's up to you. You can call again. What you do is you will place your code, and you might do what? You can just do what? You can place if and else, and place your code inside that if something happens, then call resolve. If something does not happen, you call reject. You can do that as well, and we'll do that as well. But first, let's look at this chaining of it, and then I'll give an example of that. Resolve and reject together. Now see here, for chaining purpose, this is the output A function, output B, and output C. These are all the functions. And now see here, Output A is just defining that same resolve, and it's accepting that we are resolving that again, that we are just considering that this has been successfully passed. A has been printed. Now after that, we have defined this message, this output message, and now this message, observe this message. This message is something while we will be doing the chaining, this output B will receive a message from the previous call. In the same way, yes, what if we put resolve? If you can just Saroj try that out. If you do not call a resolve or reject, that means what will happen, that it might I don't know, it might run an error and run into an error. It says that you have not called any resolve or reject method out of it, or maybe JavaScript is so lenient, so it goes out without doing anything. So in that way, what I'm saying, that if you are calling resolve and putting then, of course that output will be generated. If you are calling reject and putting a dot error, then that will be generated. But if you are not putting anything at all, that might go to some location and says that I'm unable to find anything. So maybe it asks you to call that one, or maybe it asks you to just it just prints out nothing, or it just gives you an empty thing. So we'll check that as well. Saroj, your question will also be checking. So now this is the message that will come here, and that message will become the parameter for this output B function argument. And the same way the C1. Now the interesting thing is calling over here. You see output A, then output B, then. So these are dot then output C. So that this output A, after that we are calling what? Output B, and then output C. These functions have been called, and in the last we are calling dot catch function reject message. So there will be a reject message if something has happened after some particular message. So it will just give us that message. So now let me just quickly, I'll come to that example as well, Saroj. Your problem will see that as well. But let's first run this one and see what is happening. Let me comment that out, and let's start with the new one. Now see here, we have got this program. Let's save that and let's run that. Okay, running that over here. See here, A, B, C. Everything is being done successfully. Now, I'm not using resolve, but let's do one thing interesting. In that B method, for example, in that B mass function, what I'm doing is that I'm just placing, maybe I'm just making this wrong. Timeout function is wrong. I've done that in output B, right? So let's run this again. We are not doing the resolve thing, but we are just looking at how things will happen. Now you see here, A, if you see here, okay, if you see that A is printed out, that means that A has been successfully done. So Saroj, your question might be that if you forgot to write some, or maybe some message out of that, so it might ask you for that particular thing. But anyhow, it says that set timeout is not the defined function. So after A, it has just gone out, and it says that there is some error occurred. So this message error, like this reference error, this error is a syntactical error. We are not talking about a resolve error right now. So reject error. So basically what is happening is that at this point it has just stopped because there is something wrong has happened. So what I'm trying to say here is that, again, let's now do that in the C1. So what will happen? The C function. Now what will happen? That we'll see that A and B will execute, of course, and C will have that error. That error is, of course, it's not the resolve reject type of error. It's an error of syntactically being not defining the function or not using the right function in that one. So what is happening is that this is the chaining of this one. Output A, call out output A dot then output B. If that output is successful, that means then, so then pass output B, then output B will execute, and then output C. So is there any chance that we will so even though each function is happening, yes, exactly. Now even though all these functions are happening, A, B, and C is taking maybe 3 seconds, A took maybe 1 second, right? So, but again, what is that? So you say that without the promise, the program won't run. So what do you mean by that, Rocky? Because without the promise, we are putting this promise specifically to implement this functionality, that once its working is done, once it is resolved, then it should go to the other part. Otherwise, it should not go to the other part. Okay. You said that without the promise, the program won't even run. Oh yes, without the promise. Okay, so it's not like that without the promise, Rocky. It was that inside this promise there was a syntactical error. So yes. So what happened is that it never went to the it never reached to the C. Why? Because there was a syntactical error in B, for example. Right? So what happened is that it has taken a syntactical error, and that syntactical error is stopping it from going inside that C function. So, but again, what is happening is that we are getting the output of maybe A and B if that problem is in C. So A and B will still run, yes, and then the C will be stopped. Why? Because the C had some problem. Right, Rocky? Is that what you mean, or maybe you have a different question? Okay, right. So now, as I said, that you can have multiple shapes of this one. Let me just see that. So yeah, this is the chaining, and what we do is that we have even if you use that reject code, after reject, it's not automatically. You see that calling resolve or reject won't immediately exit the promise and invoke the related then or catch. It simply puts the promise in a resolved or rejected state. So it does not mean that if you have called reject or if you have called resolve, then the next lines will not be executed. Next line will print their own happenings. Let me just show you that. For example, this is the resolved one, for example, and then I'm console.log here doing, and inside promise of C, I'm inside promise of C. I've just placed a console.log, and let's see its behavior. Okay, see here A, B, and C has executed, and then inside promise of C, it might have happened that C, what is happening, that even though I called this resolve from here, but still it goes for the other values, other things, and it might just go and find out that what is being happening in them. Right? So this is basically the thing, and then you can do what whenever. So what it does is typically is that it puts up the promise in one of these states. Whether when you call it resolve, it says that the promise has been made, it has been done. And when you call it reject, then we're calling the reject one. So for that reject, what it does is that it says that my functionality is done. When you are doing that reject, so it will done what? It will say that now the promise has gone into a state that is not accepted. Right? So what you can do in a promise function, maybe you may just write down inside that promise function. For example, you say that if something has happened, or as someone was asking, you can just put a if condition, and you can place anything at all. Maybe if something has reached, or x has a value of 2 or whatever, and you call then you call what? The resolve with a value, right? X is 2 now, anything. I'm just taking one example. Or maybe you can do what? Or maybe else you say that call reject. X is lost. So anything is lost, maybe. Right? So what is that? If you're basically if you're talking about an X in something. Okay, so this is, can we wrap promise at the end triggered by something in the function? What does that mean? Can you just rephrase your question, Saroj? At the end, wrapping with someone, what does that mean? Wrap the promise at the end. Can you just write down the syntax and let us know what you are trying to ask? All right. So by the time she's just putting, so again, you can just do, we are doing return from the beginning of the function. Okay, right? Yes. And you want to, okay, yes, you can define you can define a promise. You say that you want promise, something like that. So if you remember, we can define a function we can define a promise like that as well. Saroj, you can just define this one as this one, and you just write whatever you want. And whenever you are done with that, you will be just calling then an error over at the bottom. So that is define a variable as a promise. Like again, defining a literal promise, right? A variable of that promise. Does that make sense, Suraj? So yes, here we are doing that return from the top. But again, as I'm saying, that you can just define a promise as a variable, and then you can just do whatever you want inside that, and you can have that promise running into that. Right. So now let's talk about the last thing that was remaining over here, and what is that? Is that arrow like arrow functions. And I hope you are very much familiar with the arrow functions. I'll just have a quick look at it, and you know that we can have those arrow functions where there is a parameter list and that logic. The function comes. If you remember, we have talked about this function message 1 and message 2. And what happens is that arrow function will just take message 1, message 2, and it will just have this arrow behavior. And ES6, please bear in mind that ES6 we mostly use this arrow function like syntax. And what is the benefit of it? A very important benefit of it is over here. We can even if there is a single value, single statement, we can even just left out the return statement in from that. You see here, how can I make it? Adder with arrow equal to num1, num2, and num1 plus num2. This is arrow. So now it is technically saying that return this num1 plus num2. So your code becomes very short, and this code becomes this function code which was written over here in this complete line, like again two or three lines, is being coming in a one line and with minimal effort. So again, what you do is that you just place a bracket sign if there is if there are some list of parameters, you place those list of parameters, and then question mark, and then if there is a body, you will be just placing that curly braces and placing that body inside that, or otherwise you can just you can just place a single statement, and that would just return technically the value out of it. So I'm expecting that again you people are familiar with that arrow syntax, and that arrow syntax usually goes like this. If you see here, so it will be this response and that, and if you do that, it would typically mean the same. Are you people familiar with this arrow syntax? Yes, anyone? This arrow syntax, now this what it is doing? Resolve and reject. Okay, yes, you have used it that in the 2 to 2. That's very good. So this is the arrow function. But not only to save time, again, it saves out lots of things. Basically, you need to write so many callback functions. So we usually use this ES6 standard for doing that, so that we are again to write minimum code, to write minimum minimum lines of code, minimum words of code, and then just handling this by ES6 standard way. Rocky. Inline functions. What do you mean by that inline function? You want to say that these are the inline functions? Naseem? Okay, so yes, if you are calling them inline functions, maybe that they are also. I don't exactly know if that terminology is used as inline function as well. But anyhow, they will, as you see, that they will save us a lots of things. And as I said you that this one of the thing that we have seen, adder by arrow. Sorry. Arrow, we have seen that you can just define a function that accepts number, maybe num and num2, whatever, and you will be just getting num1, num plus num2, num1. So what you are doing is that you are only you might be saying that way you are saying that it's an inline function, but again you can always have a body surrounding to that as well, right? So that can have a surrounding body as well. And another benefit of this is very important benefit, lexical this. You remember lexical this means what? You remember when we were talking about prototype of the function? So we you can see in the in the notes in the last week, you can see that this variable that was defined for catching up this. So again, before going into this function, we should have the reference of the object where we are calling, right? So, but this is the syntax, and if you study the last week's notes, you will find that. And you see that that is representing this, and this is where this function has been called, the prototype, and that function where it has been called. So take the reference of this inside that, and then inside that set timeout, call that function. Why? Because syntactically or semantically that did this is not this was not recognized in that set timeout. So what we do is that usually we store that in that. So but again, that also is solved by our this arrow function. Arrow function lexically preserve this one. So whenever we use this with an arrow function, that will typically means whatever object it has been initiated on. So it will be just that same like of that you are saying that inline function or something. So what we are doing is that this arrow function will be just saving this lexical thing, and it will be just giving us this keyword, and we don't need to just manipulate this keyword with something else. This keyword will work on its own, right? So this is a lexical thing, and here they are saying that be careful when using arrow functions, as not every situation calls for a lexical this. For example, when we declare methods on an object, we always want this to point to the current object, so the lexical this does not make sense, and arrow functions will actually fail to behave as expected. So see here, this is a shortcoming of this arrow function as well. So see here that here we have a test1 object, and we have this a value defined, and b has been defined as a function. Now this is an arrow function, this dot a, it's just logging in that one. And if we call this test obj dot b, it's undefined. And why this is happening? We use arrow function. Not every situation called lexical this. For example, when declare methods on an object, we always want this. When we are calling this over here, we are always talking about this test1 object, right? So when we just call test1 obj dot b, so we are calling this function. So this is undefined. Why? Because this test1 obj does not have any, if you talk about, there is no reference to it, and we are just calling test1 obj dot b. So it will be undefined over there. Now, if you use this one, like this method, so you can just always call test2 dot obj dot b, because b is a different function, and that has this related to this test2 object, not anything else, right? So depending upon the situation, depending upon the need of the time, what you want to write, what you want to do, you will be just using that one of the function. Sometimes you will be using that arrow function, and sometimes you will be using that function. So is that clear? Because now I'm about to take a 5 minutes break, and then we'll start our test in the next session. I'll just open up the text for some time, and then I will just as I said, I'll be opening that test for at least 24 hours. So those who are not here, who are not like right now in class, they will be able to just conduct that. But those who are over here, they will be just attempting that right now, because it will be. So let's take a 5 minutes break. This is 2:35. And I will be back at 2:40, and then we'll start our test then. Right? Any question? Any observation? Anyone wants to say something? Okay. So should I expect no, or anyone is typing something? Okay. So now I'm just stopping recording at this point of time also, and let's